Alrighty guys, welcome back to another one. We're going to be loading up a 1 3/8 ounce 12 gauge 3.5 inch steel shot load, a waterfowl load. Should be a lot of fun. So before I actually move on with loading this, I want to address something. A few of you guys may have seen this video. It is now deleted because you'll see why in just a second. But we loaded up a 1 3/8 ounce steel shot load, 3.5 inch 12 gauge, which is again what we're doing here, using different load data from a different company. Everything was exact. The only thing I did differently was add a Mylar wrap. That's it. And this happened. Now, the rip through rim, that's not really what I'm talking about. If you look closely, I don't know if the camera can pick this up, but the brass is bubbled out really bad, and right here around that rip, it is actually cracked. Now, we had two of these out there, and the other one, well, it did the same thing. It didn't rip through the rim, but the brass was bubbled out way worse. Like, not the brass, but the rim was bubbled out like twice as bad. One side of it was, well, it was longer than the other side. It was bad. So we decided not to publish that video, and we deleted the original loading video. So I'm redoing it using completely different load data from a different website. If you look at the primer, you can see it's dimpled back out really bad. But that's not, that concerning. We did shoot it in a Mossberg 835. And those guns do have a large firing pinhole, and that does happen even with factory loads, but not nearly to that extent. When I said not that concerning, I meant the 835 just does that sometimes. But that one right there, that's bad, guys. I forgot to mention, when Josh fired the first one that you see here, well, it got stuck in the gun really bad. We had to beat it out with a cleaning rod. The second one, I strapped it down to the table with a ratchet strap and fired it with a string. It got stuck too. And again, it was published load data. The only thing I did differently was add a Mylar wrap to further protect the barrel, which should not have affected pressure at all. The original loading video was never live on YouTube. I did share it in a Facebook group, but I deleted it because once we fired the shells, we discovered that it's probably overpressure, even though it's a published load. That happens sometimes. If I had to take a guess as to what happened, well, the data we used, I don't know how old it was, and Alliance Steel is rumored to be not the same as it used to be. It may have a slightly different burn rate. I have no way to test that out, but it could be true, and I would guess that's what happened. We may have just used load data that was outdated for Alliance Steel, not sure. But anyway, guys, let's move on with this. I am using component for component what Precision Reloading says for, their load data. I am using Precision Reloading data here. It is a Remington 3.5 inch hull with obviously plastic base wad. Older Remington hulls have a paper base wad, but these are plastic. Blue dot powder. The only thing I don't have that the data calls for is Precision's 20 gauge 3/8 inch felt wad. Instead, I'm using a 1/4 inch felt wad from Ballistic Products. These are actually a little bit more sturdy. The Precision Reloading felt wads compress more than the BPI wads do, but that shouldn't make any difference in pressure. We're using a Mylar wrap from Ballistic Products. The data doesn't call for that, but again, it should not affect pressure at all. That's just there to, well, you don't really need it for this wad, but I use it anyway. Mylar wrap is there to further help protect the barrel wad puncture with steel shot, but this wad, I don't ever see that happening. Anyway, we're using Precision Reloading number 3 non-plated steel shot. Man, a lot of this stuff is from Precision Reloading today. Even the hull, I got a bag of these once fired Remingtons from Precision Reloading. They are the Remington Premier hull. Notice the shiny green as compared to, let's see, I got one right here. This Gun Club. Different color green. This one's shiny. That's about the only difference. I forgot the primer, guys. We're using a Federal 209A Magnum primer. But to resize this, you actually need 2 Lee resize rings if you're using a Lee load all. Or you could use a piece of PVC pipe, about 1 inch tall, big enough around to fit over a 12 or 10 gauge hole. Either way will work, but I have 2 Lee load all resize rings, so that's what I'm using. Should be resized. Yep, we are resized. primer is not out. Get the string back off here. Sometimes these come off by smacking them. That one did. Remington hulls have really tall brass, and sometimes the Load-All cannot kick off super tall brass like that. But I just smacked that one and it came off. Now to get the primer out, let me get you over here to my other press. This is my 10 gauge press. I have a bolt-on depriming punch made by Jamaicans. How that works is you just set your hole in there like that. You might be able to see it. Anyway, you just push down and it knocks the primer out and you just pull it off. The 12 gauge holes are a little bit tight coming off this. It really needs a 16 gauge mech depriming punch. But for 10 gauge holes, which is what this is mainly meant for, no problem whatsoever. It's a little bit tight coming off 12 gauge. Or you could just get a Phillips head screwdriver or a punch, set your hole over something hollow, get you a hammer, and knock the primer out by hand. That's also easy to do. But to reprime, well, that's quite literally like repriming any hull on a Load-All. Very simple to do. Again, that's a Federal 209A. So the data calls for 36.5 grains of blue dot. That's going to get you 1400 FPS. It actually says 1401 and 13,700 PSI. Now that's quite high. It's actually very close to 12 gauge 3.5 inch max pressure, which is 14,000 PSI. But this data is coming from Precision Reloading and they are highly trusted. So dump it right in. I also like Ballistic Products data, but this is just easy to find still shot data. There, we have 36. It's 36. We'll leave it at 36. The data calls for 36.5, but 36 is fine here. If I forgot to mention what wad this was earlier, it is the Precision Reloading TUPRW, commonly referred to as Tupperware, 12 gauge 3.5 inch wad. It is a nice, pretty green color. It goes with the green hull quite well. Shadot makes green hulls that are exactly that color. Pretty nice, but let's get that seated, add a little bit of compression to it. The primer punch on the press is too big, so I'm using one of Gary Caskey's wad tampers to do it. Just bring it over here, compress the powder, and we are ready for the components, aside from the wad. Guys, a lot of the stuff I'm using today has come from Precision Reloading, if I didn't mention that earlier. Usually I use Ballistic Product stuff, but oh well. Get that 20 gauge felt wad seated. Again, that was a 1/4 inch 20 gauge felt wad. Now we need, there it is, a Mylar wrap. You do not need it in this load because that wad is very thick. It's a lot thicker than a TPS wad or an LBC 50. Roll that up, stick it in there. That will bring stack height up slightly. Now we need 1 3/8 ounces of whatever size steel shot you want, as long as it fits in there and isn't overstacking the wad. And we have 1 3/8 ounces of number 3 steel shot. And again, this is just unplated steel. Nice shot. If you guys are curious, this wad will hold 1.5 ounces of steel. And imagine using little gunpowder, you could push that 1.5 ounce steel load up to some good speeds at still, within safe pressures. But I just put a 24 gauge nitro card over top the steel just to get a better crimp and to get us where we need to be for stack height. This has a 6-point crimp, so back station of the Load-All. Pre-crimp looks just fine. And the final crimp is going to look just fine. Alrighty. That's not too bad. That hull was a little bit sideways, like crushed a little bit, but it looks fine to me. By crushed, I mean it looked like somebody stepped on it, but looks just fine to me. Let's give that a taper. Oh yeah. Nice and tapered. This is a taper die from eBay. Just go on eBay and search the Load-All cone crimp and you'll find it. These are made in Ukraine, and honestly they're not very expensive, and they work, as you can see. There is a 1 3/8 ounce number 3 steel shot load, 3.5 inch 12 gauge, 1400 FPS, 13,700 PSI. If you use the full 36.5 grain charge, I just kept it at 36 because, well, 36 is just fine. You guys stay tuned and we'll get these patterned, of course, on camera for you at 30 and 42 yards using probably the 835. If you don't know, our typical waterfowl setup is a Mossberg 835 using a Kicks High Flyer mod choke. Seems to do fairly well with all steel shot loads we've tested so far. Speaking of that, the load that went bad on us, it actually patterned really well. At 30 yards it was excellent, and at 42 yards it looked almost the same as it did at 30. There was pretty much no change, which I thought was just really weird. I did make note of that in the video, but again, I did delete it. But even though it patterned really well, obviously can't use the load. I suppose I should mention it, what it was. Do not load this. Same Remington hull, 37 grains of Alliance steel, Federal 209A primer, TPS wad, 4-pedal, 3/4 cut, 1/4 inch of felt, Mylar wrap, 1 3/8 ounces of number 3 steel. And that was supposed to be 12,800 PSI at 1430 FPS. And, well, you see what happened. While I'm on the subject of overpressure, check this out, guys. This was a Remington gun club. You guys have probably seen it setting up here in numerous videos like that. But the reason why it's been up there is because this was a factory dud round. You can see that is a Remington primer. Dud round. The inside of the shell is still smooth and, well, it's shiny. It doesn't look like it's been fired inside. Nothing happened. The wad and the pellets went out the end of the barrel. Weird. Now, this one is a normal gun club. Looks completely normal. That shell went off like it was supposed to. We were shooting clays, and this one, well, when Josh fired this, I literally, hand on the Bible, saw smoke come out the breech face on the gun. Not the breech face, but the breech of the gun. And here's the primer on it. I'm trying to show you here. Look how flat that is compared to, where was it? Yeah, the normal one. That is an insane difference. I don't know what happened. My guess is this one did not get any powder in it, and this one was a double charge. I have no idea. But yeah, we were just shooting clays with some of our friends, and I fired the one that didn't go off, and Josh fired this one. Smoke rolled out of the breech. It was weird. That shell did extract just fine. Josh said it did have a noticeable amount of extra recoil over to the others he fired. It was a wild experience. I think you can actually see the color difference in these 3 hulls. This one is the one that didn't go off. The other 2 are the ones that did go off. You can see the one that did not go off is still a lot more shiny, and the crimp is less opened up than the other 2. Here's a better view of what I was talking about. The one on the left is the one that did not go off right. The middle one was normal. And that one there, well, that was an extra spicy meatball. Even the primer has flow back into the bolt face firing pin hole. That's crazy. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. It's pretty fun to make. I do really like loading steel shot for some reason. Again, we don't waterfowl hunt. It's just not something people do around here, but loading for it is absolutely fun. But anyway, we want to thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. We always appreciate that. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down in the comment section below, and we'll get back to you. And if you want to, go check out our Patreon. It's as low as $1 a month, and you guys get early access to content. A link to that, as well as a link to our Instagram and Rumble accounts, will be in the description below. But other than that, you guys take it easy, and we'll see you in the next one.